as I was saying, I work in the film music industry, and one of my best friends was composer Herman Stein, who co-wrote the music for Creature from the Black Lagoon and a number of other of Julie's movies that she made when she was at Universal International. And my CD label recorded and released the score from Creature, and that's how I got to meet Julie many years ago. I've been fortunate to have been involved in some projects with her, and the one I'm most proud of is when she asked me to help edit her autobiography, her wonderful autobiography, The Lucky Southern Star. My musical connections also helped me meet some other talented actors and actresses, two of whom are friends of Julie, and I wanted to introduce them because they wanted to be with her tonight, which I thought was very sweet. The first one has a tremendous resume that includes unforgettable movies like Red River, Nightmare Alley, Kiss of Death, and The Killing. And as great as these films and her performances are, me being a baby boomer, to me she will always be the Leech Woman. This is Colleen Gray. Also here tonight is another friend of Julie's who braved a trip to Arizona to hang around a few hundred or 1,000 cowboys earlier in the year. A superb actress who did a lot of work for the big and small screens before she decided to concentrate on the theater. I like to refer to her as the only Shakespearean actress ever to battle a giant, floating, evil, sex-crazed brain from outer space, from the brain from planet Arus, and many other pictures, Miss Joyce Meadows. And of course, I want to thank Julie for being so generous with her time and answering all my questions about her storied career and in watching countless film clips with me. She's a very forward-looking person. She doesn't like to think about her past accomplishments, so I really appreciate her putting up with my wanting to go in the backward direction to get some information about her. We're going to start the visual portion of this evening with this. I bet you that's one of the quickest movies you've ever seen. That is the Julie Adams most people are familiar with, the white swimsuited beauty who was desired by two men and a beastie. But if you add up the number of movies, TV episodes, and plays that Julie has acted in over her career, you will see Creature from the Black Lagoon makes up only about 0.5% of her entire output, but it seems to garner about 99.5% of the attention. Unfortunately, Julie's role in Creature doesn't reveal how good an actress she is, although I think she gives one of the finest ichthyological portrayals ever. Julie is usually a very subtle performer, and screaming and fainting doesn't exactly allow her to be very nuanced. The problem is that the actors in Creatures are not supposed to be well fleshed out characters. They're playing types. There's the devoted scientist, the greedy businessman, the disposable natives, and the damsel in distress, who's Julie. The film's not supposed to be realistic. It's a monster movie. There's only one star in the picture, and he's got gills and claws. So let's take a look at the Julie Adams that many movie fans don't know about, and for the most part we'll focus on some of her lesser-known performances. I'll also be offering a few reasons why I think people aren't more aware of her extraordinary acting talent. Betty Mae Adams grew up in rural Arkansas after the Great Depression. She was an excellent student and loved to learn, and she's remained an avid learner her entire life. At age 14, she began reading all the plays of Eugene O'Neill. This was at age 14. Now, if you aren't familiar with O'Neill's writing, this is not Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys, which her classmates were reading. Well, it is if the Hardy Boys were both alcoholics and they were having affairs with Nancy Drew. O'Neill is very serious literature. It's about people living lives of despair and facing unpleasant futures. If you read her book, you'll understand why these tragic stories resonated with the young Betty Mae. At age 19, she moved to Hollywood and got a big break when she was referred to drama coach Florence Enright, a noted New York stage actress and a founding member of the prestigious New York Theater Guild. Unfortunately, Florence was under 5 feet tall, and she didn't exactly have movie star looks, so she wasn't going to be a major motion picture actress. She got some bit parts in Hollywood, and here's a quick glimpse of her in the 1934 W.C. Fields comedy film, You're Telling Me. She's one of 2 nosy women on a train, the short one, and even though it's a broad comedy, her performance is a little subtler than the other woman's. That subtlety will be a big influence on Julie. Just keep memorizing that. Yeah. This is You're Telling Me.
There goes Sam Bisbee, drunker than a hoot owl. Is he a hard drinker? Hard. It's the easiest thing he does. I bet he's got a woman in there. I wouldn't be surprised. There. What did I tell you?
Now, Florence Enright became one of the major Hollywood drama coaches, grooming young actors around the clock for the studios. She only taught privately to a select few, but when she met Julie, she told her, "You have an alive face. I'll take you." Julie could only afford a 1 hour-long lesson a week that cost her $15. Florence helped her lose her southern accent, which Julie has no trouble finding again whenever she feels she needs it. Florence taught her voice control, comedic timing, posture, how to be a professional at an audition, and basically got her ready to act in front of the camera. And she also instilled a lot of confidence in the already confident young woman. Although they first worked on typical scenes that coaches and students do, when Julie started getting movie work, they'd go over the scenes she was going to do in her films. And even after Julie had become a successful actress, she continued to see Florence up until the end of her Universal contract in the late 50s. Julie felt from the start that Florence was the right teacher for her, and to this day she's never stopped singing Florence's praises. The most important thing Florence taught Julie was how to underplay, because movies have close-ups and the large silver screen magnifies everything you do. A good actor must back off from his or her performance to find more subtle ways of creating believable characters, understanding that less is more. As Julie says The doing of things is minimized. It has to come from inside, and it's generally all in the eyes. When you watch her performances, you will notice she acts a lot through her eyes and her very expressive eyebrows. They're a major part of her alive face. While it might seem obvious that the eyes are important, the next time you watch a movie, try focusing on that. It's kind of, I didn't mean it that way, focus on eyes. Anyway, try focusing on that, and you'll see that a lot of actors' eyes seem to be divorced from the rest of their characterization. Vocal inflections are also a major part of her craft, and slight variations in her voice can often express more than many lines of dialogue. Physical movements are usually very subtle, so when she does emphasize an action, there's usually an important reason. She seldom overacts, even when many other actors would do things much broader, such as in farces and sitcoms. In those situations, she does what I call kind of a controlled exaggeration. Here's one of Julie's earliest performances from 1950's Hostile Country. It was one of 6 low-budget westerns for Lippert Productions. They were all filmed over a 5-week period. They basically shot scenes 6 different ways with the same cast. They threw Julie in a few different outfits. They combed her hair a few different ways, and they gave her the name Anne in every single picture. She did have some different last names. I'll give them credit for that. And presto, 6 cowboy movies. Although Julie hasn't yet found her comfort zone, she worked so fast on these 6 pictures that she didn't have time to be nervous. Some scenes are better than others, but there are moments when everyone else seems to be playing cowboys and Indians, while Julie's in some different movie, portraying a fairly real person. The lines are typical for action pictures, but she does her best, and you can occasionally hear a bit of truth coming from her that you don't necessarily get from the other actors. Here she's playing one of 6 Annes, and even though I've seen all of these westerns countless times, I still have no idea which Anne she is. This is Hostile Country.
Pass is still closed.
How are the provisions holding out, Colonel?
Oh, swell. We got plenty.
You mean we have just about enough to last a day or 2, is that it?
Well, that is if we don't go back for second.
There must be some way to get our stock through that pass.
How about seeing the sheriff again? He ought to be able to think up some kind of a law to make Oliver tear that fence down. Wait a minute. You know better than that.
You know the sheriff. He's just like everybody else. Doesn't want to take on any more trouble than he has to. What do you suppose gets into men like Oliver? Just plain ordinary meanness?
And greed. He's the kind of a man that ain't satisfied with a piece of pie. He wants the whole chuck wagon. And speaking about pie, don't. We can't even afford to think of luxury.
Julie's next big break came when she appeared in a Universal screen test. What? Sorry. Thank you. It's good to have actresses in the front row because they can tell you when you're not handling things properly, and I appreciate that. Julie's next big break came when she appeared in a Universal screen test for Notre Dame football star Leon Hart. While Mr. Hart didn't make the acting grade, Universal's head of talent, Sophie Rosenstein, did the screen test. She turned the camera around and took a close-up shot of Julie. And that resulted in Julie getting a small but very important role in Mark Robeson's Bright Victory, a superb 1951 drama starring Arthur Kennedy and Peggy Dow. It was about love, prejudice, and understanding, and it remains one of Julie's favorite pictures. And rightfully so, because even though she's had many larger and more prestigious roles, it's a really terrific film, which unfortunately has not been released by Universal at this time. This was a big step up for Julie from earlier jobs where she did things like advertising popcorn in commercials that were shown in movie theaters. She was also no longer Betty May Adams, as her name had been changed to Julia. With 10 days of rehearsal, she got to relax, and it was a comfortable role for her because she was playing a Southern girl, something she was in real life. Julie plays Chris, whose fiance was blinded in the war, and they haven't met since his injury. This scene is when both pairs of parents are meeting, but her parents think she'll be throwing away her life by marrying a blind man. Although she gives a delicate portrayal.
Microphone. Get it closer to your. There.
Thank you. I'm fearful of the feedback. Although she gives a delicate portrayal, there's a bit of effectiveness in her performance, but almost nobody watching the movie would think there's anything wrong with it. But compared to where she'd be in only about a year, she's not completely inside her character, which is understandable considering it was her first major motion picture. Here's Bright Victory.
Good morning, Mrs. Patterson. How are you, Edward? Well, Chris, are you ready to go?
Lawrence, I want to have a talk with you.
But Larry's train is due in.
Well, that's what I want to talk about. You know, we're going to be faced with a mighty big problem from now on. I mean about Chris and Larry.
Yes, his mother and I have talked about it, too. But it seems to us it should be up to them.
Well, I'm sorry, Lawrence. I'm afraid I have to disagree with that. Normally, I'd never interfere with Chris's decisions. This is not a normal situation. So let's face it honestly. Right now, before they meet each other, it gets out of hand.
Now, may I say something? Or is it already decided?
Oh, please, dear, you mustn't be rude.
What should I do? Standing with my mouth shut? Just because my family doesn't want a blind son-in-law?
Oh, Chris, that's not fair. Larry is a fine boy.
But not fine enough for me. Oh, I'm a great catch, Mr. Evans. I'm the great golden prize. You didn't know that, did you? Larry never told you. Maybe nobody ever told him, but I am. And now, of course, now that he's blind, well, it's just completely out of the question. Nobody cares how I feel.
And how do you feel about him, Chris? Remember, you haven't seen him yet.
I love Larry, Mr. Nevins. And if he wants me, I'll marry him tomorrow.
Well, I've got to be going. Chris, it might be better now if you didn't come with us to the station. You'll see Larry tonight. Or does this change the plans for the party?
Why, no. No, of course not.
I'll make some excuse to him.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nevins.
The understated approach she learned from Florence Enright is one of the main reasons a lot of people have overlooked what a fine actress Julie is. She didn't brood like James Dean, didn't tear up the scenery like Bette Davis. She tried to apply the minimal amount of business needed to convincingly portray her character. Like a painter who knows not to add another drop of paint to the canvas because his vision has already been achieved, Julie knows it's okay to have white space. Her style has kept her acting from getting dated because it's more like life than acting. Her performances help keep her projects grounded in reality, even when the plots might not. As ridiculous as Creature from the Black Lagoon might seem, in between the screams and the feints, Julie helps to tether it to reality by acting in a very normal fashion, or as normal as we would act if we were confronted by a Devonian-aged mutant killer. Universal liked her performance in Bright Victory and signed her to a contract, and she made over 20 movies with the studio. Julie credits her further growth as an actress to watching co-stars like Jimmy Stewart, Arthur Kennedy, Richard Conte, and others. While she was part starry-eyed newcomer, she was also soaking up what it took to be a good motion picture actress. Raoul Walsh's 1953 Western, The Lawless Breed, contains an excellent early performance by Julie. It co-stars Rock Hudson, who plays a man who has gone bad and tries to reform. Their chemistry together is terrific, and Rock and Julie were friends in real life. Julie plays Rosie, a character with as many layers in her persona as she has layers in her dresses. It's a complex part, needing the multifaceted performance Julie gives her.
Rosie? Rosie?
What is it?
Where's my boot? I can't find my boot.
Here it is. Maybe you better hang it on your watch chain.
Yeah, I'll have to.
Going out to look for a card game?
Mm-hmm. Saloon on the corner seemed lively enough. Where's my money? Pretty thin bankroll.
Yeah.
Well, it won't always be like this, honey. Running all the time, living with riffraff, rich in the morning, poor at night. Someday we're gonna have that
Oh,
farm.
West, a farm. Green grass, white painted house, water that runs all the year round. You wouldn't take that farm if somebody put it in your lap, tied up in ribbons.
What?
How many times have you had enough to buy a farm twice over? We had $3,000 in Waco. And there was a time in Houston when you were 8,000 ahead. But did you ever even look at a farm, Wes?
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say I don't like your fancy dream. You hang on to it because it makes you feel better than the gamblers, the riffraff. Maybe even better than me. I don't want you to feel better than me, Wes. Because I love you the way you are, the way you really are.
One of these days, I'm going to surprise you, Rosie. I'm going to win me a wagon load of money. Then we'll settle down. Might even do it tonight. Feeling lucky.
Good. You might win enough to pay for dinner.
And if I don't?
We'll eat anyway.
Grandma, what would I do without you?
Oh, you pig.
I'll be back for something.
If you looked very carefully at that scene, you might have noticed Julie's beauty and sex appeal. Something Universal was also very well aware of. So in films like Mississippi Gambler and Horizons West, she wore some of the flashiest, most colorful costumes they could come up with, and she seemed to change outfits in just about every scene, regardless of how wealthy or poor her characters were. Universal treated all their contract actresses like pinup gals, and Julie was photographed in hula skirts, sexy Christmas outfits, bathing suits, and all sorts of clothing meant to accent her physical charms. Universal even came up with a PR campaign claiming they had insured her legs for $125,000 through Lloyd's of London because they were the most perfectly symmetrical legs in the world. Now, I've never met a man in my life who cared whether a woman's legs were symmetrical. Long? Maybe. Shapely? Definitely. But symmetrical? Now, Julie doesn't give that insurance rumor too much credence, and considering the honesty of most studios, I would tend to agree with her. But that's another reason Julie's sometimes been fairly overlooked as an actress. Sexy women are not also supposed to be great actresses, because it's assumed that without their looks, they never would have gotten hired in the first place. Marilyn Monroe is a perfect example of this, and there are many others who've had to fight against the stereotype that they can't possibly be talented on top of being incredibly attractive. And to be honest, there are a lot of media stars today whose physical appearance is vastly superior to any talent they might have. This next clip illustrates Julie's underplaying. In Frances Joins the Wax, she worked with Donald O'Connor, and the performances are very broad. After all, this is a movie about a talking mule. Everyone's in on the fact that it's a comedy, except Julie's character. Despite all the lunacy going on around her, she plays it amazingly straight, even when she's covered with paint as part of a psychoanalytical test given to her after she hears Frances talk. She keeps a rein on her character and prevents her no-nonsense officer from becoming a caricature the way others in the movie are presented. Her realism actually makes the film much funnier. This is Frances Joins the Wax.
Now you wait right there and I'll fix your oatsies.
I'd like to fix her own.
Hi, Francis. Look, I know you're mad at me, but I had to tell the truth. Did he answer you? No, he gets this way. He's stubborn. Look, I'm sorry, Francis. Well, it's no use now. He won't talk to me.
No, I'm sure he won't. Come, Lieutenant.
No, no hard feelings, Francis. Come up, see my painting sometime.
Hello? Hello, Francis.
Goodbye, cutie.
What's the matter?
He spoke to me. Well, at least I thought he did.
Who?
Francis, the mule.
Oh, you dreamt it.
No, he said... Well, he said goodbye, cutie.
Why don't you knock off for the rest of the day? Take it easy.
Maybe I'd better.
A mule. Cutie.
Universal had many lovely starlets on contract, including Susan Cabot, Mara Corday, and the Creature's girlfriends from his two sequels, Laurie Nelson and Lee Snowden. But there were three contract actresses who stood out from the rest: Piper Laurie, Barbara Rush, and Julie. These were Universal's main leading ladies, and besides the fact that they were all very beautiful, they were also extremely talented. But Universal used these women primarily as love interests for their leading men, or as part of a triangle between a good guy and a bad guy. But they were never the stars of the pictures. Universal was cranking out westerns, swashbucklers, science fiction pictures, crime melodramas, and these were all male-oriented genres. They were vehicles for actors like Jeff Chandler, Audie Murphy, Jimmy Stewart, Rory Calhoun, Rock Hudson. Universal had very few women-centered films, so Julie always had to relinquish a lot of screen time to the men who drove the plots. When Universal did produce a major chick flick, they were called soap operas or tearjerkers back then, they would often bring in a famous leading lady from outside the studio. People like Barbara Stanwyck, Ann Baxter, Esther Williams, or Lana Turner. Universal failed to groom their contract actresses to be big stars the way they groomed their male actors. I guess they'd forgotten that Deanna Durbin saved the studio from bankruptcy in the prior decades, but perhaps they thought of Deanna more as a singer than as a female. Julie certainly deserved some lead roles that other actresses were getting. She easily could have excelled in the types of parts that were being played by Elizabeth Taylor, Ida Lupino, Gene Tierney, and others. When Julie, Piper, and Barbara left Universal, the impression had been created that they were supporting actresses rather than someone who could carry a picture by herself. And it was already tough in Hollywood for women, where female leads have always been in a minority compared to male leads. But even within the male-dominated films she appeared in, Julie always shined. And The Looters is a prime example. She got to act with Ray Danton, her future husband in real life. It's an excellent melodrama about plane crash survivors in an uninhabited area, and her role of Cheryl Gregory is a complex one. She's already world-weary at a young age, and she doesn't think much of men or the human race in general. The terrific cast includes Julie, Danton, Rory Calhoun, and Thomas Gomez. And really its only flaw, like some of the other films being viewed tonight, is that Universal hasn't released it from the vaults. Maybe one of these days. Everybody in the film plays their role with a bit of heightened realism you find in film noirs. Although it's not as realistic as you normally get from Julie, it's a fine performance and it's a role she's rightly proud of. Her character is similar to Rosie in The Lawless Breed, but with a big difference. Rosie had love in her heart. Cheryl Gregory only has commerce. This sequence opens with Rosie making up a story about an imaginary boyfriend. This is The Looters.
Anybody wait for you, Sherry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the fella I'm going to marry. He'll be worried sick.
Well, let me guess. He's charming, successful, nice iron gray hair, a little bit overweight, and 2 divorces, right?
He's young. He's younger than you are and better looking. But you're right about his being rich, though. Yeah, he's been away on a business trip to Europe. He just got back a few days ago, and he sent for me. So you see how worried he must be. Nobody's looked at Red for a while.
Now, what about this career of yours?
Let me tell you about that. There's a town in Washington called Heckman. They breed cattle and nice fellas and wholesome girls. And me. I went to New York to make my fortune. The only trouble was my fortune was my frame. People wanted to buy it, all right, to plaster on magazines like the one you saw. And occasionally, take her to an apartment while Mama was in the mountains. But Hepworth girls aren't like that, I kept telling myself. So after a few photos, I went back home again. Score one for Sherry.
Who scored next?
Oh, Hepworth, a home run. Seems those nice fellas read those fancy magazines. I was a scarlet woman. So next stop, New York again. Only this time, Mr. Hill, I'm going to play to win.
So Hepworth girls really are like that.
That's what the boys say. The boys must be right. I'm getting cold. You better go in. Well. See how easy it is, Mr. Hill. You're one of the boys. Only not one of the rich ones. That's too bad, isn't it?
Julia is still a tease like that to this day. It's my least favorite trait about her. I'm going to hear about that later. Around this time, Julie made Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was an incredibly popular movie. And even though Julie had done a lot of serious acting up to that point, making her the love interest for a killer merman was not the kind of role you'd find Grace Kelly or Susan Hayward doing. But Julie was under contract and the studio called the shots. She and Universal were flooded with positive mail pertaining to her role, her beauty being so powerful she was able to woo a tough guy, a brainy guy, and a scaly guy. Julie played a lot of smart women during her career, as the studios obviously recognized the ease with which she could project intelligence. As I said, Julie is very well read. Her library at home has more books in it than some public libraries, and her role in Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of a number of examples where she plays a scientist. But while she could have provided a good role model for young would-be female ichthyologists, that part of her character wasn't emphasized as much as the fact that she looks enticing no matter what she's wearing in the jungle. But I'm sure after my presentation, Julie will be happy to field any ichthyological questions you might have. I know she has very strong opinions about the best way to serve broiled salmon. Whether Julie missed out on some more serious roles because of being linked to the creature is anyone's guess, but it's interesting that many superb actresses made monster and science fiction movies, but few became so inextricably linked to them. Barbara Rush made both It Came from Outer Space and When Worlds Collide, but she never had that association with either of those films. Neither did Patricia Neal in The Day the Earth Stood Still, Donna Winter in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Anne Francis in Forbidden Planet, and our guests here tonight, Colleen Gray and Joyce Meadows, they never got that association that to the Leech Woman and the brain from Planet Arris that Julie has. The closest parallel to Julie might be Fay Wray in King Kong, and both Creature and King Kong have a very strong sexual component between the beast and the beauty, and that might be why the connections between the films and the actresses have remained so powerful over time. And I do, since I do badmouth Creature once in a while, I want to make it very clear that Julie is extremely thankful that she starred in Creature from the Black Lagoon. She loves your Creature sweatshirts. Without that role, many of us might have never discovered her. She talks a lot about the movie in her autobiography, and there is a new book coming out called The Creature Chronicles, which is the ultimate book about the three Creature movies. I co-wrote it with two other authors, and Julie contributed a wonderful introduction to the book, which I think is the best part of the book, so make sure you buy that, even though I won't get royalties. Julie left the studio system because she wanted to stretch as a performer and get more substantial roles. She turned part of her focus to television, as did many actresses who weren't getting the movie roles they wanted. And she starred in many TV episodes, most of them good, if not excellent. Here's a scene from a solid 77 Sunset Strip episode called The Fifth Stare. She's Margot, who's married to Tony, played by Richard Long. Her husband hired Richard Devon to murder her, and the hitman has already entered her apartment. Margot has just heard a noise and grabbed a gun. Her husband has set it up so that when he phones her, the killer will emerge from behind the curtain and strangle her. This is 77 Sunset Strip. Watch your neck, Julie.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Now listen to me. Listen to me carefully. Don't touch anything. Don't touch a thing. And don't talk to anyone. I'll be right there.
Oh, hurry, Tony, please, hurry! I thought you said the scout.
I know. Take it easy. Take it easy.
Oh, God, you don't know how awful it was.
I know. Now take it easy, darling. Everything's going to be all right. Now listen, darling. Try to remember. Where was he?
I don't know. He must have been behind those drapes. Because when I came out here to answer your telephone call, he got something around my throat. Like a stocking.
Well, I guess he came in through those French doors.
No, I opened them for air. I thought I'd never breathe again.
Now, Margot, this room is no place for you. Now go in the bedroom, please.
When will the police be here?
Did you call them?
You said not to talk to anybody. I thought you'd call.
I'll call them right away. Now go in there, darling, and lie down.
Ignore that. That's a well-written, well-directed, and well-acted scene because long after Julie's been attacked, she's still terrified, unlike many such near killings you see on TV when somebody's almost murdered, and they seem to get over in about 5 seconds. Marcus Welby, MD, provided a couple of excellent roles for her, and in Don't Ignore the Miracles, she plays Claire, a woman in her 40s who discovers she's pregnant for the first time. At first, she tried to get an abortion because she doesn't want anything hurting what she thinks is a perfect marriage. But when she learns her husband is having an affair with a younger woman, she uses the child as a weapon. Julie plays a very high-strung woman, which is understandable given all she's been going through. Julie's very pronounced physical mannerisms in this episode are not typical of her subdued style, but Claire is not a typical woman in an everyday situation, as she's been faced with one trauma after another. This is Don't Ignore the Miracles, Marcus Welby.
But we must follow doctor's orders, huh? We must take care of Mama.
Stop killing me with kindness.
The devil is going on. I've spent the better part of the day in talks with 2 engineers who didn't even remember the depression because they weren't even born yet. I run out of patient understanding.
What a shame. You'd understand it perfectly, wouldn't you, if you could come home to a wife who was born after the Depression? Maggie wasn't she?
Did you think that what Claire didn't know wouldn't hurt her?
All right, Claire. If you know, you know. Please, let's put it behind us. It's something that no longer has any meaning.
Were you, or were you not, going to ask me for a divorce?
Yes, I was, but I didn't.
You took me to South America and you were planning to get rid of me?
I was hoping...
To let me down gently?
No! To convince myself that I still loved you, that I wanted you more than I wanted Maggie.
But it didn't work, did it? After all, I'm 43, Maggie's 26. I spoiled your delectable plans. I enslaved you with my pregnancy. I must have guessed somewhere that I was on the verge of losing you. So I chained you up the only way I could.
You didn't know you couldn't have. I wasn't sure myself.
No, you couldn't. We couldn't have had this baby, could we? To our darling unwanted child.
That's a rotten thing to say.
Don't tell me that you want it. Why would be competition for you? For 19 years, you've been a child in this household. I spoiled you and I babied you until you thought that I was your mother and you went out and found yourself a young girl.
And you wanted me to be a baby, my whole life planned by you. Those martinis ready for me every time I came home. That was a rut. You all dolled up wanting me to be clever, skim over things and not ever talk. We never really talked. You call that a marriage?
Oh, you must have hated me when Welby told you. You trapped, Paul, trapped. I would love to have seen your face. How did you react, Paul?
Just please go lie down.
I'm sorry, Dr. Welby.
Lie down, Claire. Go to bed. Please go to bed.
As you can see from those two previous performances, when Julie had to pull out all the stops, she could do it as well as anyone. Julie wanted to expand her repertoire and experience by doing work in the theater, and she studied privately with George Stanoff, noted drama coach who was co-director along with Michael Chekhov of the famed Chekhov Theater. Stanoff helped Julie work on other techniques that allowed her to pursue stage work, and which also gave her additional tools with which to practice her art in television and movies. She had some of her biggest and most challenging roles in the theater, and although this part of Julie's career has unfortunately not been very well documented by film or video, in her book you can really feel her passion for live performance. One of Julie's proudest achievements came when she received the Dramalog Award for Best Actress for her role in Long Day's Journey into Night, written by Eugene O'Neill, the playwright whose work helped inspire her at a young age to become an actress. I tried to come up with a clever segue to get from Eugene O'Neill to my next subject, Elvis Presley. I was up till about 3:30 in the morning. The closest I could get was that O'Neill wrote The Emperor Jones and Elvis was the king. I will take other suggestions afterwards if you can come up with something better. In 1965, Julie got a role that a lot of other actresses would have killed for when she starred in one of Elvis's most enjoyable comedies, Tickle Me. Even though he was surrounded by more beautiful young ladies than you can count, the most desirable of all the females was his boss, played by Miss Adams. It's a very silly movie with a haunted house and hijinks galore, but Julie doesn't even show a twinkle in her eye and plays a fairly realistic character who has fallen for Elvis's charms without losing her dignity or her ability to act. The fact that Elvis communicates with the audience shows you just how unrealistic this movie is supposed to be, but Julie helps it by providing a much-needed dose of believability. Assuming you need believability in an Elvis movie.
That will be all, Mr. Bentley.
You sent for me, Miss Radford?
Lonnie, we're going to have to do something about your singing.
I've been trying for years.
Don't get me wrong. The guests think it's wonderful, and so do I. But my staff complained that you threw this place into such a tizzy yesterday, their whole routine was disrupted.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
You don't have to be. Just pick your moments. The staff will be happy, and the guests will be happy. You like it here, Lonnie?
Sure. It's the best ranch I ever worked on. The smell of fume instead of the smell of the...
Sit down, Lonnie. Now, there's been some discontent for another reason. Jealousy. You know how it is when a pack of women get together. If it appears that you're giving more attention to one than to another, even if it only seems that way, they begin clawing and scratching like wildcats. Try to keep everybody happy, won't you?
I'll certainly try, Ma.
And may I say that management also approves.
I'm glad to hear that. There's no approve of management.
And in that case, our arrangement should work out beautifully. Yes? All right, I'll talk to him.
See you later, Miss Redford.
Bye, Lonnie. Yes, Mr. Penfield.
Julie does kiss Elvis in the spoiler alert. Julie kisses Elvis in the movie. The made-for-TV movie The Trackers was an excellent Western that tackled prejudice in a very credible way. It starred Sammy Davis Jr. and Ernest Borgnine, and even though there's a black man on a horse, it's nothing like Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles. Julie, a little bit. Julie plays Dora, looking anything but glamorous as a mother whose son has just been killed and whose daughter has just been kidnapped. Focus on Julie's face and amazing voice control. There are no exaggerations here. She could have played it hysterically, but this way you can see she's a woman who's had the center of her life ripped out and she's barely hanging on to the shell that's left. This is The Trackers.
See you tomorrow, Sam.
We're never gonna find her, are we?
Now, don't even think that, Dora.
I just wish to the Lord I hadn't fussed at her this morning. I got something, Sam. I hadn't fussed at her in a whole month of Sundays.
No, Dora. Don't you worry. I sent a message to Charlie Gordon.
Will he come?
Well, of course. We rode together for a long time. He'll come. Now, don't you worry, honey. Dora, I want you to move over to Dillhurst while I'm gone.
No, there's no need.
I want you to.
Sam,
Huh?
you be careful. If anything happened to you,
Now, don't you worry. Ain't nothing gonna happen to me. And I'll be bringing Becky back with me, too.
If you can find it, it's not out on DVD, but if you have a VHS player and you can find it on video, it's definitely worth watching. And if you'd like to buy a used VHS player, I have about 20 of them. We're nearing the home stretch here. One of Julie's dream opportunities came when Jimmy Stewart, whom she acted with 20 years earlier in Bend of the River, wanted to make her his wife on his sitcom, The Jimmy Stewart Show. They were friends in real life, and their rapport is evident in this extremely funny scene. He's a college professor, and she's Martha, his wife. He's recently been hit on by a pretty co-ed where he teaches, and everyone on campus knows about it. In the previous scene, which you're not seeing here, the co-ed visited Martha in her house, and although we didn't witness the conversation, we assume the co-ed plans to steal Jimmy from her. This scene begins when Jimmy arrives home from work, and Martha is still thinking about that meeting she had with the co-ed. The acting is more like what you'll find in a farce, and the energy is really high throughout. It's good sitcom acting, with plenty of exaggerations, but nothing pushing it into parody or ridiculousness. Julie's comedic timing and solid direction and editing enhance the scene, and it offers another glimpse into her incredible range.
What are you getting?
nope, for the semifinals here.
Well, do I get a kiss?
Where have you been?
I went over to Big Mother's, saw Luther, and we got to talking.
Until now,
Well, it's just a half hour more than usual.
nobody has any regard for me. Wendy calls up at the last minute to say she and Peter won't be home for dinner. Jake runs all over the whole neighborhood chasing cats. And you come drifting home at just any old hour.
Honey, it's not even 6 o'clock yet. What is it? Are we going out someplace tonight?
I just might.
What's that mean? I just might. Martha, Martha, there's a frigid wind from the polar ice cap blowing through this room. Wait. Just where might you just go tonight? Martha? Hey, Jake!
What do you want with Jacob?
Never mind, Jake. I just wanted to check with Jake, see if his cat got your tongue. Come on, Martha, what's the matter? You haven't given me a frost like this since I threw your Uncle Everett out of the house.
I'll never quite forgive you for that one either.
Well, that was 8 years ago. If you want to invite him back, go ahead and invite him back. At least he won't make those cracks about you having another baby at your age.
Very gallant. You can throw a 60-year-old man out of your house. But you can't throw a 20-year-old girl out of your office.
And how did that lead clear across campus to this house? Or did you pick up that completely unfounded story from the faculty wives' gossip party?
It was handed to me in my kitchen by one Miss Joyce Gibbs.
Here?
This afternoon.
The little witch.
Ha-ha.
What?
Completely unfounded, is it?
It's a lie.
What's a lie?
What she told you?
How do you know what she told me?
She told you a blatant, out-and-out lie.
I didn't tell you what she told me.
You don't have to tell me what she told you, because you wouldn't have told me she told you if she didn't tell you.
Didn't tell me what?
That I lured her into my office and tore her clothes off.
That's not what she told me.
That's the story. She's told the story all over the campus.
She hasn't told anybody that. Donna Haley started that story.
Donna Haley doesn't have anything to do with it.
Donna Haley saw her coming out of your office.
Look, I'm the victim. Donna Haley saw her?
And Miss Gibbs was afraid I would hear the distorted version of the story, so she came over here to tell me what really happened.
Oh, she did she? Well, what did she tell you really happened?
That she accosted you.
I did nothing of the sort.
Will you listen to me? I said she accosted you.
Oh, that's better.
It's just as bad.
As me accosting her?
No.
Look, honey, I don't know what's going on here. I was the victim of a circumstance I tried to handle the best way I could. I come home here, I find you're aware of my innocence, but you're treating me like an old lecher chasing after young girls behind your back.
Oh, Jim, you missed the point of it all.
All right, pile it on. Accuse me of being ignorant along with everything else.
I know you're not guilty.
Well, then what are you so all-fired furious with me about?
I'll tell you what I'm so all-fired furious with you about.
All right, tell me.
Because you didn't tell me.
Tell you what, for Pete's sake?
Leave Pete out of this.
Oh, I don't mean our Pete.
When it all happened, did you come home and tell me what had happened? No, you came home and I asked you how your day went, and you said it went all right, the way you always say. And you didn't have the decency, the common decency to confide in your own wife.
Confide what?
That you'd been accosted by a young and attractive co-ed. Oh, that's what just absolutely infuriates a woman married to a man who won't share his problems with her, because underneath it all, he just doesn't even really trust her. And that's what just burns me to a crisp, James K. Howard.
I'll never understand women if I live to be 100. And at times like these, I feel like I already have. Twice.
Too Close for Comfort is an even sillier sitcom, but it shows how you will rarely get overacting out of Julie. While you can't call this underplaying by any stretch of the imagination, if you compare her acting to that of her co-stars, including the brilliant Ted Knight, watch how she tries to tone things down despite the farcical nature of the show. In sitcoms, every single line is either a setup or a joke, and on top of it, it also has to advance the plot. So there are some painfully expositional lines here. You won't see brilliant acting, nor should you expect to. But watch Julie attempt subtlety whenever possible. The tender closing kiss could have easily been exaggerated for a big laugh, but she keeps the crazy scene somewhat tethered to reality with a bit of truth. All you need to know is that Julie plays the best friend of Ted Knight's wife.
Henry, I have finally reached a point in my life where I am able to say what I feel.
I have always been attracted to you. Do you think we could go to bed together?
What did you have in mind?
Nothing serious, nothing permanent, nothing that would hurt anybody.
You're Yo-Yo's best friend.
And I always will be.
Henry, believe me, when I walked in here today, I had no idea that this was going to happen.
That makes two of us.
I know how this sounds, but please believe me, I am not being cheap and I'm not being promiscuous. I'm simply admitting that I want you.
Well. I am flattered.
Good. That's a start. I have been wanting to do that. And you know something? I'm not disappointed. I think I'd better go now. What's that?
I don't know. Oh, it's not in the hall. Must be something out front.
Oh, and Henry, I'm leaving for Los Angeles tomorrow night. Till then, I'll be in room 608.
One of Julie's most famous roles was a recurring part in the comedy mystery series Murder, She Wrote, starring Angela Lansbury. The actors had to carefully straddle the line between keeping it light and serious, too. Julie plays Eve Simpson, and while there's often a gleam in her eye, and she's a quirky character, Julie backs off from going too far and operates within a slightly skewed framework of reality. You can tell from this brief scene why Eve was such a popular character.
Well, you will have some wine. It's a charming little Bordeaux with quite a vivid nose.
Afraid I'm on duty, ma'am.
Bordeaux, is that where you're going on your vacation?
Bordeaux, Provence, all over the south.
Oh, Frank and I were there once. It's very romantic. I hope you're going to share it with somebody very special.
I'm traveling alone.
Oh, I'm afraid that's not what Phyllis Grant, your travel agent, says, ma'am.
Small town idol strikes again. Surely whoever I travel with is my own business.
Unless it has something to do with a criminal investigation.
According to the sheriff's logbook, Deputy Martin stopped in to help you with your cat on a fairly regular basis.
Oh, she's a very bad cat. And the deputy seems to have a way with her.
Julie has continued to work when good roles have presented themselves to her, and in this close-to-home episode, her marvelous alive face is as alive as ever.
Molly was trash when Kurt married her, and she's trash now. Do you know that she got pregnant on purpose? She trapped my son into marriage. But we took her in. We embraced that girl despite all her problems.
So all these accusations, everything Molly said is a lie?
My daughter-in-law is mentally unstable. We've known for years she needed help.
Mrs. McNeil, how often do you see your grandchildren?
Whenever I want.
And do they come here to your house?
Oh, good Lord, all the time.
And you visit their house?
All the time. Do you believe for a second that I would let anyone
anyone hurt my grandchildren? Kurt has never raised a finger to those kids.
How did he punish them?
Just like I raised him. My philosophy is that you confront every problem head on. When Kurt and his brother talked back, they were sent to their rooms without supper. Kurt was afraid of the dark, so I made him sleep in the cellar. You don't have to spank to get your point across.
Now, Julie's son Mitch is here tonight, and you can talk to him about the parallels between that. And it does explain some of Mitch's, shall we say, characteristics. When you've had as long a career as Julie has, not everything you do is going to be a classic. But these two short clips reveal what a professional she's been by continuing to work despite occasional jobs like this.
My baby.
This is serious stuff here. Show some respect for the scriptures. I believe Julie is still trying to remove some of that eye makeup to this day. Although I know these clips embarrass Julie, which is the reason I keep showing them, I did show them for a reason. In her 60-plus year, Julie has worked with only 3 green monsters. And that's if you include the plague of frogs. The Frogs and the Creature are the only 2 amphibian-based shows she was in. In this updated chart, you can see that if you add other green monsters to Creature from the Black Lagoon, that means we're still only talking about 1.5% of Julie's projects involving such beasties. Regardless of the type of project she's worked on, regardless of how acting trends and dramatic styles have changed over the years, 2 things have remained constant: Julie's professionalism and her amazing talent. Throughout her career, Julie didn't just give her very best, she was and is one of the very best. So the next time somebody tells you how much they love Julie Adams in that sexy white bathing suit from Creature from the Black Lagoon, you might want to respond, "So do I, but did you know that was only one of an incredible number of excellent performances she gave?" Now, before I introduce Brian Cooper here, I would like to have all of you give a big round of applause to not just one of my favorite actresses, and probably yours as well, but she's also one of the smartest, sweetest, nicest, funniest women I've ever had the honor to meet in my life, Miss Julie Adams.